In case you're thinking about flipping the switch into manual mode and trying out manual on this FPV drone, there's a few key differences in terms of functions and operations that I want to show you guys so you can know what to expect when you switch from normal or sports mode to manual mode. Let's start with the right stick first, this simple right stick. If you're in normal or sports mode, or this goes, when I say normal or sports mode, let's make this clear. I'm talking about any GPS drone, whether it be this, because normal or sports mode uses GPS on this, so it flies like a GPS drone, like your Mavics or Phantoms. So if I push right on the right stick with a normal or sports mode, the drone will fly sideways like this. No matter how hard I push, it'll just tilt more, but it'll fly sideways like this. Whereas if I'm in manual mode and I push the right stick, the drone does not fly sideways. The drone doesn't even move sideways. All the drone does is rotate. That's all it does. So pretty much you keep pushing to the right, the drone will just keep rotating like this. That's all it will keep doing. If you push left, it's the same thing. The drone will just rotate left just like this. That's all it will do. That's all it can do, is just rotate left. Versus the GPS drone or normal and sports mode, you push left, the drone's gonna fly to the left. So it's not only gonna tilt when you push left with the GPS drone, but it's gonna fly to the left while tilting. You're not gonna get that in manual mode. You'll just get rotation. That's pretty much it, right? So bear that in mind. Now with the GPS drone, when you push forward on the right stick, it's gonna tilt forward and fly forward. When you pull back on the right stick, it's gonna tilt back and fly back towards you. So it's doing two things at once. It's doing technically two commands at once when you push one direction on this stick. Another thing worth mentioning is whether you're flying sideways, forward or back, normal or sports mode will maintain that altitude. So that's pretty good for filming. You can focus less on having to worry if the drone is dropping or raising. No, it'll tend to hold that altitude while it's flying fast forward if you push forward, or while you're pulling back and flying backwards, which is pretty convenient and makes filming a lot simpler and easier. However, when you jump into manual mode, the drone does not fly forward or fly back. This right stick going forward only has one command, and that's to rotate forward, rotate forward. Now, of course, it's gradual. If you push a little, it'll rotate forward a little bit, but if you keep pushing forward, all it's gonna do is continue to flip, 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 flip. That's it. If you pull backwards on the right stick, all it will do is flip backwards. That's pretty much it. It will not fly forward. It will not fly backwards. So now you're thinking, if it's not flying forward and it's not flying backwards, then it's hovering and flipping. Well, it's just gonna drop out of the sky like a brick and smash into the ground while you're flipping or while you're flipping. So how do you prevent that from happening? You have to give this drone throttle, or what I like to call thrust. Zero thrust is all the way at the bottom. So if you're spring loaded, your stick is going to be in the center like this. You're going to have to physically hold the thrust down to prevent this drone from thrusting. And that's why people take the spring out, because they don't want it to constantly be pushing thrust on them. Whereas the GPS drone, the center point is, I wouldn't say it's thrust, but it's enough thrust to keep it in position, hovering off the ground. Whereas this, if you leave it centered up in manual mode out of GPS, it will not just stay centered hovering just like this. This will just keep rising. Ooh. Whereas the GPS drone, your center point is just hover. And that's why FPV guys take the spring out, because if they don't and it's centered, it just doesn't hover, it continues to go up. Yes, it's recommended to take that spring out, but if you're coming from a GPS drone where you're used to the spring centering things up, you might want to leave the spring in for your first couple of flights, and you physically hold it down when you want to bring the drone down. Now, the other thing to mention about this thrust over here, when you're in manual and you push up, yes, it wants to go straight up, so you would think that if you thrust up, it's just gonna go straight up. No, but there's wind, there's all kinds of things that's going on in the environment. The thrust that this goes up with can throw it off a little bit like this, and then that changes the whole direction in which it's going up and where you'll end up. So be careful with that. Whereas the GPS drone is constantly communicating with satellites in normal and sports mode, so when you thrust up, it's going up nice and straight. Even though it's going up fast, it's gonna hold that straight position. Now this is where the manual mode gets kind of tricky, and you really need to work and develop your skills. And this is why I really recommend the simulator, because you're coming from normal or sports mode, which has a completely different operation on the sticks from manual. So when you decide to throw this in manual for the first time, if you've never been on the simulator, this drone is gonna completely surprise you. This left stick is the same thing. When you push left, it yaws left and it keeps going. When you push right, it yaws right. So very similar to the GPS drone in terms of the yaw. But remember, while you're yawing, you have no GPS, so this drone could be drifting all over the place, right? And then you have to know how much thrust you're giving it, because if you give it thrust and it's yawing and it's twisting and it's turning, that thrust is gonna send it in any direction, right? If you smash this thrust right up, you're going to 90 miles an hour. You could be going 90 miles an hour up. If the drone ends up leaning forward, you're going 90 miles an hour this way. If it ends up leaning backward, guess what? You're going 90 miles an hour this way. If you end up twisting to the side by just touching this lever a little bit, you're going 90 miles an hour this way, or you're going 90 miles an hour this way. So you've got to watch this thrust, and keeping it halfway, as I mentioned earlier, is not just a hover. It depends on what your last position was here. So it's a constant, hey, if I'm going this way, I need to correct, I need to correct, I need to correct, I need to correct. It's a constant correction without giving too much thrust. As long as you have thrust going, right, even if you push forward like this, it's gonna thrust like this. If you keep pushing forward like this, the drone's gonna keep going like this. If you apply thrust, it's gonna thrust that way, right? If you pull back on the stick like this and you've got the thrust going, guess what? It's gonna thrust this way. It's never gonna stop thrusting until you kill that throttle. When you kill that throttle, it's coming down exactly like a brick, like that, until you apply back that throttle and get it to come off the ground and stabilize. And then when it comes off the ground with throttle, oh, you don't want to come off the ground like this, you're going that way. You don't want to go too much like this when you go back on the throttle, or you're going this way. So it's a constant, I would say initially when you're learning, I would say the word battle. That's why people pinch. It's a constant battle of correction to get this thing to do what you want it to do. That's just the way manual flight is. Let's take it for a spin. Let's go up. See, we go up, right? All I did is push the left stick up, but look, I'm going forward, right? Because of wind, leaning, it's not going up until I push the stick down, but look at which direction it's pointing. Now I got to give it gas to keep it steady. Keeping it steady, but look, it's moving forward. I constantly have to correct. Look, push the left stick to turn this way. See that? That's turning this way, but if I keep pushing, look what's happening. It keeps turning. See that? Meanwhile, the throttle's at halfway. It keeps pushing, right? Next, I can use this to lean up, down, right? As long as you don't have too much throttle, you don't have to worry, but it's a constant correction, guys. Now, when you point down, you're automatically diving down, right? Because the throttle is pushing you down. See, but the throttle now is pushing me down. If I pull the drone up, the throttle is pushing me up. But if I pull back too far, it's pushing me up and reverse. So you really got to know your angles with this thing, right? You see, but you see, you can lean left and keep the throttle left. You can lean right. Constant correction, right? Constant correction. Drop the throttle if I want to cut it off, right? So it's just not the same, right? If I want to get that flying to the left or flying to the right, I've got to use two sticks to get that kind of a curve. See that? When you're starting out, you want to stay high, right? I'm a little too high and come down back low, but you always want to give yourself clearance. Just cut the throttle to go down. If you want to go down faster, just point your nose to the ground. You'll go down, and then you see I'm starting to drop. I had to give it throttle again. I had to give it a little bit of throttle, give it more to carry it back up, right? It's a constant correction. Constant correction. Don't be afraid of acro. This is only my second week, and yes, I was aggressive, but guys, hit up that simulator, man. That simulator is what really did it for me. I'm pretty sure it's what's going to do it for you. It doesn't matter what age you are. You know, of course your reflexes are going to be slower as you age, that's a fact, but you don't have to speed and go crazy. And just the long range on this thing, the distance is absolutely incredible, and the ability to turn. Now I also adjusted my rates and stuff like that. If you guys want, I can show you my rates for more cinematic, not as responsive, but still responsive when you push the sticks all the way out, in case you want to get aggressive. But just to show you guys, 2.5 weeks, and I haven't been flying every day. I have a full-time job, yeah. So I've been flying, you know, whenever I get a chance, and just trying to work the simulator whenever I get a chance and learn something new, and you know, just taking things slow. Let me come off the throttle a little bit there. Yeah, just taking things slow. So here we are, guys. This is it. That's all I wanted to share with you guys. And the beauty is, you know, if you got to refix your goggles, or you feel uncomfortable, or something happens at all, just hit that pause button, pause it up, and then nicely and gently bring it in for landing. As you can see, I always fly with a spotter. See, I got my spotter. So for all of you guys who say, oh, you need a spotter, just because I don't show my spotter doesn't mean I don't have one. There you go. All right, guys, I hope this video was helpful. If you found some value out of this video, give you some confidence, some kind of support in any way, just hit me up in the comment section. Let me know what you guys want me to make a video on. I'll make it for you guys. Hit thumbs up, smash that like button, hit subscribe if you haven't already. Make sure you hit the bell so you get notified when I release more FPV videos, and of course more Mavic videos and Autel Evo 2 videos, and much more. Make sure you become a Patreon, guys. Big benefits to Patreon. Get direct access to me. Any questions? I'm right here on Patreon. Support this channel, and there's benefits. Last Mini 2 went all the way to the UK.